Welcome everybody to our program today, Gardening and Arthritis. I'm Jane, a nurse and one of the arthritis educators for Arthritis New Zealand. Firstly, today I really want to acknowledge and thank Pfizer, who've sponsored this program. As a charity, Arthritis New Zealand is very dependent on sponsorship and community donations, so we really appreciate Pfizer sponsorship. So today in our program, we'll be touching briefly on the importance of activity and arthritis and the benefits of gardening as an activity, and then mainly looking at tips for managing gardening and of course ideas for more information and support. So today's program will be about 15 minutes long, and of course there'll be opportunity for you to ask questions at the end of the presentation. So yes, physical activity and arthritis. Of course, it's really tempting living with a pain condition like arthritis to want to maybe move less, which in actual fact increases our pain and fatigue because the muscles are weaker, and that puts increased stress and pressure on our joints. So finding activities that are enjoyable and motivating for you is really important. And we know that for a lot of you, gardening is a really enjoyable, satisfying activity. It can be really useful to support both our physical and emotional well-being. Some of the specific ways that gardening can benefit us through physical activity are that it helps to improve circulation, also mood and sleep, and can actively help to reduce stress, high blood pressure, and fatigue. So also joint flexibility is one of the other benefits, along with supporting muscle strength and the range of motion. Also bone density, which can be an issue for women, particularly as we age and past menopause. Also an opportunity for us to make sure we have healthy levels of vitamin D. Of course, we need vitamin D for healthy muscles, bones, and teeth. And the most effective way of making sure our vitamin D levels at optimum level is through healthy sun exposure. Okay, so now we're going to start and have a look at some of the activities or the tips really that can help us to continue to garden while living with arthritis. So for some of you, this won't necessarily be new information, but maybe just motivate and support you with some of these things that you are working on managing so that you can continue to enjoy your garden. So the aim, of course, is to have a balance of activity and rest. Everybody's different, so knowing your limits is really important. Sometimes it's useful to use a timer, and so you're aiming for little and often, not rushing, and allowing time. Planning can support the pacing, planning your rest periods, thinking about when is it best for you to be doing work in the garden. Everybody, again, is really different. For some people, the mornings are a better time. For others, it's later in the day when their joints have warmed up. So knowing what's best for you is really important. Thinking about delegating where you can, using the environment. So pulling weeds, for example, when the soil is wet. Be careful about keeping hydrated. Be careful about, like we're coming into summer, try to avoid those really hot times of the day. Becoming dehydrated can really influence your well-being, your mood and your energy levels, and so in turn can, if we're not well hydrated, it can also highlight our pain. So yeah, prioritizing can support that pacing and planning, being really realistic. We've touched on the idea of delegating. Are you the best person for the job? What's the best time for you? Is it something you really need to do? Being aware of posture is a really important ongoing issue. Often when we're living with a pain condition, we tend to sometimes start moving in ways that puts more stress and pressure on other joints, and that can actually add to our pain levels. It makes the muscles work harder. It also can increase our fatigue. So being aware of your posture at all times, not just when you're gardening, is really important. We're going to touch on using particular joints, like using strongest joints for particular tasks, just being really careful about things like fingers and wrists. So we'll move on to looking at some of that now under the heading of positioning. And you can see on the right-hand side up there, there's an example of, and we have one of these to show you here, one of these ergometric, they're called tools, and they've got the handle which can give you a good grip. You can get more of a balance, so you're not putting stress and pressure on the wrist, for example, or on your fingers. So some of the other things that can help with positioning are using, if some of you already use supportive, often fingerless gloves for your hands to support your often particularly wrist and the thumb joint, you could use those underneath your gardening gloves, and that can continue to give you some extra support. It may be useful also to look at things like wrist or thumb splints, and using the palms as it shows you in that top right hand picture to push tools. Action is part of all of this as well, of course, and the top of the heading there, bend at the knees, which is fine if you can actually bend your knees, not like some of us. But there are different ways around these kinds of issues. Sitting can work for some people. There's garden kneelers, which I'm sitting right in front of there. A picture of a garden kneeler can be really useful, just even using a thick piece of foam. But the garden kneelers can be useful because they can help you get up and down, as well as actually giving you some support and where you're not kneeling directly on the ground. And just avoid things like twisting and overstretching, which can put more stress and pressure on your muscles and joints. So just a few other reminders about protection, of course, just being really aware to avoid falls, which we don't want people to have, of course. So keeping your paths clear. So just being mindful of things like when it's a good idea to use short handled tools or long handled tools, lighter tools where it's possible. So you can see in the picture here, obviously it's possible for this woman to be standing up and using a long handled tool that helps her to not have to get down so low. There's a variety of multi-purpose tools available, and those ratcheting tools can sometimes make things a little bit easier. The tool that I showed you before, and we have a set of these to give away for one of you who registered today, they're called Easy Grip gardening tools. And so I'll just touch on in a moment on where you can access some of these tools. Just before we do that, just also obviously talking about some other gardening options that can make it a little easier. So thinking about things like shrubs and perennials rather than annuals, using mulching. A lot of us are having to be really careful about not watering gardens. So mulching is a good idea for lots of reasons. Obviously raised gardens and container gardens. And I'm sure some of you have got other suggestions and other ideas, which we would welcome you sharing either in the communication or question box today, Or also on Thursday, we have the Zoom Cafe, which is an opportunity, a more informal opportunity really for us to talk about your lived experience of arthritis, and in this case, particularly focusing on gardening and arthritis. If you do, just a quick reminder about any aches that may develop or be part of your experience of living with arthritis. If you do use pain medications, it can be a good idea to think about the timing of those before you are active, for example, whether it's gardening or other activities. Don't wait till you've been involved in your activity and then have to try to perhaps manage any pain that's triggered. So sometimes, yeah, thinking about the timing of medications is useful. Massage is always helpful. It improves the circulation and the warmth. Using heat on those aching joints can be really helpful. Hot water bottles or wet bags. Massage, obviously, with topical creams or not, can be helpful. So I mentioned just a couple of gardening tools, and if you have a look on these top two websites, they're disability websites, and they have a variety of different support gadgets, including the Mobility Centre has a range of these kinds of tools. They also, Independent Living Service, the top website there has the garden kneelers, as does the Mobility Centre. Also, Mitre 10 and Bunnings, which are generally at various places around the country, they sometimes have things like garden kneelers, and they may also, you can also check if they're handy to you. Sometimes they will have some other tools that can be really helpful. So just as I start to finish up, and you might want to be posting your questions or thinking about your questions, which I'll answer in a moment. Just a reminder again that Arthritis New Zealand is a charitable trust, so as well as sponsorship from organisations like Pfizer, we do appreciate community donations. So if you feel that you're able to support us in that way, you can go to our website and use the donate button. Thank you for that. All for today. So thank you everybody for your time, and just keep connected, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.